Okay, I think we are live. We'll let some people hop on the live stream before we really get going. Okay, let's go. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the live stream. Today, I am here with Alyssa Lizzini. There she is. To look at her show, The Universe Between Here and There. Alyssa is one of Akron Soul Train's emerging artists, showing in our capsule gallery and a little bit in the main gallery as well. Her show will be up until May 11th. Our gallery hours are Wednesday through Saturday from 11 to 4. So there are still a few weeks to see these really immersive, amazing pieces in person. As usual, thank you so much to our sponsors for helping us support emerging artists in Northeast Ohio. Now, to introduce Alyssa real quick, she's an artist based in Cleveland whose work explores concepts of social geography and community engagement and research of the city and its neighborhoods. And I'm going to switch my camera, and Alyssa, can you maybe talk about the overarching themes behind your work in the show?
Yeah, so in this show specifically, I was thinking a lot about the connection between space, time, and memory. And something that really inspires me that is somewhat of a metaphor for this connection is the way that the universe expands. So I'm thinking a lot about kind of the way that the universe works and how that can be a metaphor for memory. And in my drawings, the many layers seem to implode or explode, and that is kind of referencing the way that our connection to place might change within our memories over time.
Okay, which one do you want to start with?
Oh, we can start with this one.
Okay.
So, well, actually, these two are kind of like a pair. So this one is called East 41st, and this one over here is called Industrial Valley. These two, I created both of them in Cleveland, and they are these layered compositions that kind of provide like this circular window or portal into a space. When I am thinking of drawing, I'm thinking a lot about how these many layers convey a sort of compression of time and space. You're seeing many things at once in a single picture plane. So these were both about very specific locations. This one of East 41st, there is a church on that street that's featured in the work, and then a lot of houses on the street. And they kind of all seem to meld together or start floating away from each other and creating this kind of uncertain space, which may be the way that we perceive a space when we're just thinking of it in our memory. And then the other one that we looked at before, Industrial Valley, that is in the Industrial Valley in Cleveland. And I thought that these tall structures here offer like an interesting parallel to the church structure that's in the other one. So I kind of tried to mirror them in that way.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, like compositionally, you have the kind of very upright structure to the left, and then the more kind of horizontal, but in very different ways and moments in the city.
Yeah, I think they're very different spaces, but if you think of like Cleveland's history, I think that like the industrial elements almost become church-like in a way, because that was what the city like ran on for such a long time, and it has that history. So.
And they're very like monumental, and when monumental architecture kind of has like this reverence behind it no matter what it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Can you maybe talk about the color scheme in both of these images? Because you have the circles and the portals going on that ties them together, and then they're kind of like opposites in terms of color.
Yeah, so I began each one with kind of like a wash of color that was in this masked off circle shape. So in this one you can see the green that's kind of coming through. That was the color that I began with, and then I began with pink in the other one. And I think that I don't know, those were colors that I really associated with each location. Like the Industrial Valley kind of tends to have this almost like green, grungy like quality. So I think that was what I associated it with. And then they also have a lot of greenery in that space now just because of the way they've developed it into like a towpath trail.
Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of the connection there. And then with this one, I remember when I initially had taken photos there, it was golden hours, so I really wanted to capture this like pink sense of light. And then I included this key as well because I was kind of playing around with incorporating found objects into the work, and how does that add like another layer of context.
Yeah, because layering is so important. I'm super interested in how like the line drawings get layered, and it's almost like you're seeing through like the skeletal structure of things.
Yeah, that's something that I definitely wanted to get across, and I like to break that up with the parts that are painted in.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. Like, how do you choose what gets fully rendered and like what gets kind of only partially or maybe more abstract?
Yeah, I guess I just focus on like finding a focal point in the image, and that's the part that usually gets like rendered more fully. Just because I think it provides like a place for the eye to rest almost, because this is like your eye is constantly moving, so I want to make sure I always have that like place where you're really looking into the image.
Yeah. It just draws you in, and then you start seeing all these little tiny details, and they're really amazing to just look through. I like the idea of the portal. Okay. And where should we move to next?
Let's move to these guys.
Okay, we're gonna go across the room.
All right, so this one here, so I started a series over the summer, not directly related to the themes of space and time and the universe expanding, but I started a series that was all about people sitting on their front porch. So I would go on neighborhood walks and ask people if I could draw them while they're sitting on their front porch. And then of course, I took some photographs as well so that I could like bring it back to the studio and make some larger works. But this was the first couple that I like had the courage to go up and talk to, and they lived just around the corner from my house, and they were so nice. I feel very lucky that they were the first people that I talked to. But they were great. They told me a lot about their lives and how they came to be living there. And I think that with these pieces specifically, and there's another one of people sitting on their front porch, I was thinking a lot about how the way that we build architecture like kind of becomes a means to socialize with other people. And the front porch specifically has like such an interesting history, and it also has changed given like our current day and age and the way that we're so technology driven, we don't really slow down a lot. And I find drawing to be a way to slow down, so I think that the front porch is like similar in that sense.
And houses aren't always made with front porches like this now, or like neighborhoods aren't always made with this kind of stuff in mind anymore.
Yeah.
It's kind of a marker of a specific period.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And of like when I think people talk about this a lot, but like neighbors not quite knowing each other as well as they used to. And
I mean, even the fact that this couple like just lives around the corner from me, but this was the first time that we ever talked, like I think that is crazy. So
yeah. No, it's such a like wonderful thought to just kind of be sitting on your front porch enjoying whatever life is happening outside of it,
right,
in this kind of like safe haven of your home still.
Yeah, absolutely. I really like that he was wearing like these work boots too. I think that it brought like an interesting storytelling element, that he like it kind of shows a little insight into his life or what he might do for work.
Yeah. And then you have like kind of insights into their home, into how they like decorate maybe. It's really just a nice kind of concept to know the people that are living around you and like what they might do or something.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Okay.
And that kind of brings us right into this next one. So this was another, I think this was a pair of siblings. We never talked extensively about if they were siblings or not, but this was another group of people who I went up to on their front porch and asked if I could draw them. And I thought it was great that they were like young people.
Yeah.
So I feel like I have drawn a lot of like older people in the past, so it's cool.
I feel like there's maybe that generational divide of like who sits on their front porches and
Right.
watches the world go by.
That's really true. Yeah, I think that we need to get more young people sitting on the front porch.
Yeah. And I love how like you kind of use pattern in really interesting ways. You have like the chain link fence that kind of goes throughout because that's an element of the city.
Oh yeah.
And then you have like the bricks and stuff of the houses, and they're kind of overlapping and twisting and turning all around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was trying to. I wanted to include a tree element as well, just because they seem to be siblings. So I thought that was something that kind of connected them, or maybe a metaphor for the way that family is like a tree.
Do you kind of, I guess, build the entire image intuitively, like in where to place certain things, like the fence or the bricks or windows or rails?
Yeah, I think so. It's a lot of just doing one layer and then responding to that layer with the next layers.
Yeah.
I think there's never like a ton of planning in each piece, but I think it couldn't be planned. Like it needs that sort of spontaneity of where things will end up.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of how we think of things in our memory too. Like things kind of
yeah.
pop into our head in layers.
Right, definitely. Yeah. And in a way that we can't predict. So yeah.
Okay. Let's go, I guess, into the
Into the
room.
Alright, so this one has some larger works and also some small works. We can start with these smaller ones. So these I actually made during college, and this is when I was originally getting into like really layering imagery. And these ones I think speak a lot about memory as well. Just the way that certain things are faded away. There's a lot of shapes of color. And I was also thinking a lot about maps, about grids, the way that a city is a grid. And then I think the shapes of color, it tend to reference like almost data visualization, like when you have a circle or a square somewhere. So that's usually how I like to think about it, but there's some printmaking elements in here, and these were just a lot of fun and good experiments when I was in college.
Yeah. I like how you kind of reference data visualization because I think that can sometimes come across as very cold, but because you're overlapping it and you're drawing it organically, it makes the space like more rich.
Yeah, I like to, I just like to think of the many layers of context that are in like our world if we're thinking about our social world. And I mean, data is one of those layers, but I think there's a way to portray it and to reference that without it being just like a graph.
Yeah, there's a human element behind the data.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's those, and then we can move over to this one. So this is a piece that I have thought about for a long time. Because this one house in here is where I grew up until I was only like 5 years old. And right before we had moved out of this house, the bathroom fell through the ceiling into the kitchen. And everyone was fine, like no one got hurt, but I always think of kind of the way that the house like fell apart. And I guess that's what's displayed in the drawing. And that has always made me think of memory in that way of things like falling apart, just because that was like the first place I lived, and that was like one of my last memories there was that just falling through the ceiling. So
wow. Yeah, because you have like the ceiling, like the planks kind of breaking apart, but then you still kind of have the shape, the recognizable shape of the house kind of going into this vortex.
Right, yeah. Yeah, I like to think of that as like maybe a wormhole of sorts, and that kind of gets at the whole memory as an expanding universe idea. And then also the blue and the circles here reference like a sort of cosmic feeling and like stars in the sky and all that kind of stuff. But
Yeah.
yeah.
So is this one of your newer pieces then?
It is, yeah. But something that I feel like has been a long time coming. Just because that memory, I feel like, has inspired a lot of the work and the way that things tend to come apart.
So do you think that, like, you're kind of moving into, because this is maybe even slightly more abstracted and, like, layered, and there's a lot of action involved in what the actual, like, subject is, like, what's happening to it.
Right.
Do you think you're kind of maybe moving in that direction a little bit?
Yeah, I would like to. I was really happy with, like, I really like the ground in this piece, so I would like to continue exploring that in the way that there can be a sort of atmosphere, like even though it's just lines, maybe some of them fade back more, some of them like blend in with the blue or whatever color is creating the ground. So I want to continue doing stuff like that, and I think for me, like I enjoy when it becomes almost abstract because there's so much layering. So definitely something I want to explore more.
Yeah.
And then this one over here is kind of a similar vibe, but a much more recent memory. Because this is in Milan. This main structure that's in here is the Duomo, and this is like the piazza there. So I think Milan was a great place to use as reference, just because it has like this very frenetic city energy that, I mean, you don't get in many places. So that was the inspiration for this, just everything happening at once. And then I was only there for a short amount of time, so over here, like the spots where you see things coming apart, I guess is kind of how it feels in my memory, that I can't quite visualize it the same way that I did when I was there.
Yeah. No, I think, like, going to older cities, there's this real sense of, like, the way they use space, because they didn't have a lot of it.
True, yeah.
So everything is packed in. And so it creates this kind of, like, you're trying to look at everything all at once. And this kind of makes me feel like that. Like, oh, I just want to see everything and I want to remember everything exactly.
Right, just like this overload of information. And I feel like that is how it feels to travel. Like, you just want to, like, soak up every single thing that you're seeing, but it becomes impossible.
Can you talk maybe about the scale of this one, and if you want to continue, because this is where it kind of, the scale helps it become immersive. Like, we are the same size as the people in it, so we feel like we can almost walk into the space.
Yeah, so that's definitely what I wanted to convey. I did this one the most recently, and I was so inspired by the show that is at MoCA right now by...
oh, yes. I don't know.
I'm not going to say the name right, so I'm not going to say it, but the show at MoCA currently is incredible, and I love how his pieces, you feel just sucked into this world that is like not quite like the real world. So I really wanted to make a piece that has that same feeling. Like, I want someone to be able to walk up to it and suddenly, like, you're in like this line drawing and the way that it's flowing apart, and you know. So yeah, and I just love working big.
Oh, it's super fun. One detail I kind of want to maybe talk about that we've seen is this layering of paper and like these weird sort of stitched together paper pieces and little valleys and texture.
Yeah.
Is that just kind of like a material part of your process? Has it become more conceptual as well, and like kind of stitching together these scenes?
Yeah, so it began very just because of material, just because it is incredibly difficult to get a piece of paper to sit correctly on this giant board if you just try to do it in one go. So I came up with like a system of kind of tearing my drawings apart and then putting them back together on the page. Like, this drawing was all drawn, and then I ripped it apart and put it back together, which was so scary. But yeah, so it began as just like something that I needed to do because of the way the materials work. But I think it does lend itself to conceptually what the work is about and the way that everything is stitched together. And it could almost be seen as like blocks on a map, or, you know, stuff like that. So.
No, I had no idea that you drew it on the paper first and then tore apart the drawing and rebuilt it on the panel. That is super interesting part of like the overall process.
Yeah, mostly because of the space in my house. Like I just am working out of my house, so it's easier to keep things just on paper until they need to be displayed.
Yeah.
So then that's kind of what I need to do to get it up here.
Yeah, that's also kind of how memory works, is like when we first see something, we have this whole picture, and then each time we recall it, we kind of have to piece it back together.
Yeah.
And then it gets harder and harder to do so until you maybe only remember like one square.
Right, absolutely.
Of the whole thing.
Yeah, that's something I really want to think about more conceptually in the future too. Just maybe like a square goes missing.
Yeah. And then you have a background in illustration. Can you talk about maybe how like the narratives aspect of illustration or certain kind of concepts of those kind of fit into your fine art work, if that's contextually, politically, whatever?
Yeah, I think that I would definitely consider my work fine art, but I think that like I never really can escape, nor do I want to escape, like the sense of narrative that is in all of the work. I think that like each layer provides another story that's like kind of adding to the overall narrative of the piece. So coming from that illustration background, I think is definitely what has caused that to happen. Like I'm always thinking of what the story is in each piece.
Yeah.
So
very cool. Yeah. You said this is the last piece that you've done so far?
Yes.
Are you working on anything new?
Well, I am hoping to do some more of the front porch paintings, and hopefully bring some of this energy of these two recent pieces into those.
Yeah. Do you see yourself as like a historian in a way, now that you're kind of like working like in your neighborhood and kind of recording like things that are happening in real time, like the people that are living there?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I would go as far as saying I'm a historian by any means, but I think that for me it is like a record of like people I've met and places I've been, and the longer I've been like making the drawings, like the bigger this record is that I'm like kind of gathering of everything. So I really love to like have that record, and and I think drawing is also just like a form of love in a way. So these are like places and things that I care about. So yeah.
Okay. Well, if anyone has any questions, if you're watching right now and you have questions, type them into the comments. If you're watching after the live stream and you have questions, type them into the comments and I can relay them. Let's see. Give a few moments if I have any more questions for you. Oh, I had one. I'm still so excited about the fact that you tear up the drawings and rebuild them. I'm sorry. I think that like process-wise, that's so important.
Yeah, definitely. I was not excited when I did it, but it turned out good, and I feel like that's something I'll use a lot more often in the future.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm gonna switch it back to me, and we'll wrap up. Thank you all for joining us, and thank you to Alyssa for sharing your work. You can see the universe between here and there until May 11th at Akron Soul Train, and you can continue to follow our Facebook, Instagram, check out our website for more information and upcoming programs. We always have workshops, panel talks, studio tours, lots of stuff always happening at Akron Soul Train each week, and we hope you can join us. We'll see you in the next one. Bye!